My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free Second Look review. Second Look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
Hi, I'm Chris.
And I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Fergal.
And we're from Movie Smash.
Comic book movies are having a golden age right now with the MCU.
Movies based on comics aren't necessarily a new thing, but they're a big thing.
Join us every other Tuesday on Movie Smash.
We explore these movies and find some hidden gems.
Every other week, we revisit some of the best.
And some of the worst movies based on comics or graphic novels.
Was Green Lantern as bad as you remember?
Heck no!
Is Time Cop the most accurate time travel movie ever created?
Absolutely.
Was Mystery Men way ahead of its time?
Should they be revisited? Should they be forgotten?
Join us on Movie Smash and find out. Listen wherever you find your fine podcasts.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the latest episode of All2ReelToo. My name is Michael E. Cullen II, and with me, as always, is
Sesame, Vertigo, and Carta.
And today we have a special guest, Jordan Ramirez. Would you like to tell our audience a little bit about yourself here, Jordan?
Okay, so my name is Jordan Ramirez. I am the host of my podcast series, Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. Sorry if it sounds echoey in here. It sounds like an open room right now. But anyway, so I am a film lover, I'm an animation lover, anime lover, and I also am a huge listophile, which I will explain very much later in this episode. But other than that, I'm a podcaster, a YouTuber, and it's great to be on the show. Thank you, Michael.
Before we get started, too, where can people find your podcast if after they're done listening to this, they'd like to find you?
Okay, so I tried to get my podcast on Apple Podcasts, but for some reason, there's been so many things going on. But you can find my podcast on on Spotify and on YouTube under Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. You can watch my episodes there, as well as give me a positive review or a thumbs up even on Spotify just to spread the word. And if you can spread the word, you can help me and the show keep going. That's all I got to say about that. Thank you.
That's a good thing to do. Do that for us too. All2ReelToo.com. You can find everything there. Also, we're on all the platforms, so just check us out there, folks. We're on the social medias that still exist before they're all banned, and but then while we still have some freedom of speech. Anyways, today on the show, we're going to let our guest tell us a little bit about the movie that he chose for us to talk about. Because this is a new series I decided to start called Be Our Guest, in reference to Beauty and the Beast. No, for some reason. But so we're going to let our guest, pick the movie. And today, what have you picked for us, Jordan?
So today I have picked 2017's The Green Fog by Guy Madden, Evan Johnson, and Dalen Johnson, I think is the other one. And this is a vivisection or a experimental video essay on the movie Vertigo by using 95 movies and 6 television shows, like clips from 95 movies and 6 television shows, all set in the city of San Francisco, revolving around Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo with a little bits of twists and turns at the end. So this is a pretty interesting take with all of the big names and stars you have ever dreamed of from the golden age of Hollywood, cult cinema, action movies, and television, wherever you may find them. And this is pretty much the film I have chosen.
Yeah, and this was part of the 60th, the San Francisco Film Society's 60th San Francisco International Film Festival, which was where it premiered. And yeah, it's really interesting what they did with this. I remember hearing about this back at the time when it came out, but it was like, I always wanted to see it, but we have access to it on the Internet Archive right now. So it's only in 240p, but it's still pretty watchable at least. So yeah. It's not too pixelated or anything, so it's decent.
No.
What did you think of this, Sesame?
I loved it. I didn't really know what it was about at first because I never seen Vertigo before, so I was just watching it, with fresh eyes, and I had no idea what it was about. But I was like enthralled with it. I watched it again last night, so I watched it twice, and yeah, I just loved it. I thought it was really unique. Like whenever anyone was going to talk, they would just like end it right there. So it was like conversations about to start, but they never start and stuff like that. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting way to go about it. Especially, it's kind of like a recontextualization. Like if somebody told you the story of Vertigo and you couldn't use, there's like one shot from Vertigo in the movie, but it's just a really incidental shot. But if you take, if somebody said, "Hey, recreate Vertigo," but you can't use any footage from Vertigo. It's really interesting. I love experimental film. I took an experimental film class in college that I really enjoyed different things. I mean, like Maya Deren and Stan Brakhage and people like that are kind of like my heroes when it comes to making that type of films. And I've done some experimental films myself, which Sesame's done some of the music for and stuff. But yeah, it's really an interesting thing. So why did you pick this, Jordan? Like, what drew you to this movie?
So going back to what I mentioned, I'm a listophile. I'm a huge fan of the lists of John Waters. I just read his most recent top 10 movies of 2024. And whenever I set out to find whatever obscure or maybe underrated film or film that nobody talks about as much, because I try to listen to other podcasts talk about other movies, I stumbled upon this film, and I might have I keep it in my notes here of just the reaction that John Waters gives as to why he picked this movie. And I think I have it right here. And so for this film that he chose, The Green Fog, he called it an avant-garde ode to San Francisco, the most cinematic of cities, told entirely through clips of film shot there, but with all the dialogue cut out, so the parts of the movies that originally didn't matter now do. Abstractly clever, strangely compelling, and just about perfect. So that was my reason why I had to check this out, because after reading that and I had to watch the trailer, I'm like, I have to see this movie because this is something I love. And also, I've watched a few of Guy Maddin's other movies. I've watched his version of Dracula. He did Brand Upon the Brain from 2006, which was another experimental film he made. I haven't seen My Winnipeg. And he did The Forbidden Room, which was his take on like Lost or unseen movies that were destroyed, but is the reason why I chose this movie.
Yeah, I was not familiar with Guy Maddin before this at all, so it kind of makes me want to see more of his work after this, which I'm definitely going to have to check out some of that stuff. Yeah. Any thoughts here, Sesame, on what you saw in this film? Anything that like you found interesting or confusing or anything?
Well, the first time I watched it, I was mainly just kind of, a lot of times I'll just watch something first just to kind of get a feel for it, and then I'll watch it again where I actually kind of pay attention to details. And what I noticed, I'm not sure if it's true or not, but what I noticed is whenever someone was like experiencing like a really, really strong emotion is usually when the fog would start coming out, like either like intense sadness or like when someone's about to get into like a really big argument with someone, or or even like love. It seemed like there was like a scene where like two lovers were really gonna get into it together, and then the green fog would come out. I don't even know if that's even accurate now, but that's something I noticed.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw where Guy Madden said that the reason he named it the green fog is because he saw somebody in a store, a guy in a store who had dyed his hair green, and it didn't really work well, and he says it kind of looked like a green fog in his hair. And it also there's a part in the original Vertigo where the woman comes out of a green kind of fog in the end and stuff, and it's interesting. Like he just kind of took that and went with it. So
yeah, it is a very fascinating concept. And besides that, there were two. Besides Vertigo, there was also another Hitchcock movie that they used clips from, The Birds.
Yeah.
You might have spotted it at the end credits. And there was also, this was a film I had tried to find, an incident in San Francisco, which is mentioned at the end credits. You won't find it anywhere, not on the internet. You would have to get like a bootleg copy of it on DVD. And the other one it's on DVD, but it's an adult movie that they were showing, Thundercrack, which is an adult movie, which also has an intermission. It's over 2 hours long, has an intermission. And it's a pretty interesting film. But other than that, I just thought it was...
Like by adult film, you mean like kind of like an X-rated film or something? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like X-rated movie.
Okay.
And I watched it, and they only used the clip of from that movie with one of the Kuchar brothers, who was in that movie as well. So for those who have never seen Thundercrack, it's basically a parody of The Old Dark House, the James Whale movie, and it features a lot of acts, which I'm not going to I don't want to discuss. I don't know if I could say it here.
I mean, if you want, you can, but if you don't want to, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Let's just say it involves a lot of adult acts, and it's out there, and it also involves a gorilla.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Every good film needs a gorilla.
Yes.
Yeah. It was really interesting, and I like how there's like a lot of use of Macmillan and Wife in this, which was interesting. So, and, which I used to watch that show when I was younger. Like it would be on reruns sometimes, and I'd watch it, and it was just like, just a cheesy detective show, but not like, nothing great, but it was still good TV. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
that was interesting to see.
Yeah, and the other ones that they used, I hadn't seen them, were the television version of Hotel, which was basically The Love Boat but in the building.
Yeah,
and the other ones were Murder, She Wrote, the original Mission Impossible television series. You can see like brief clips of it in the movie, and the other one was The Streets of San Francisco, where they show like clips with Carl Malden and Michael Douglas. And the other ones that were like not noticeably well-known films, they had like the clips from The Zodiac Killer, which were featured in this movie before David Fincher did his version of Zodiac.
Yeah.
They used this version of The Zodiac Killer, which I watched in its entirety from beginning to end. It's a pretty interesting sort of grindhouse type movie from the early 1970s decade.
Yeah.
There's also like lesser known clips from Daddy's Gone A-Hunting, or really great science fiction movie clips from Time After Time. They use that one, and Star Trek 4, and I think and they also use like clips from the movie Crackers and Portrait in Black with Anthony Quinn and Lana Turner. You might notice there were a few clips. And I also like that in the audio that you listen to when it sounds distorted and in slow motion, those audio clips were taken from the Joan Crawford, Jack Palance movie Sudden Fear, came out in 1952. And you'll notice a lot of like clips of big movie stars that one may or may not have noticed, like Humphrey Bogart in Dark Passage, or the films that I tried to skip over, Dirty Harry, Magnum Force, and the other one that he was in. It's like the Dirty Harry trilogy. The series. I remember now. Deadpool.
Yeah, I was
the
gonna say the Deadpool
from '88.
Deadpool, yeah, that one had Jim Carrey was in that movie.
Yes,
a young Jim Carrey. Yes.
Yeah. And the other ones that were used in this film. The oldest movie on this list, because I thought everybody talks about remakes of movies that they love. This movie features the oldest film on the list, the Ten Commandments from 1923, the original version, not starring Charlton Heston. This was the story of Moses, and if anyone has seen the original, it only is a prologue. The actual story takes place in 1920 San Francisco, dealing with honor the Ten Commandments and so on and so forth. And you'll see like when the church in San Francisco was being built, that was from that movie, which is pretty interesting. And the other one that they use, another oldest film, is the movie Greed by Erich von Stroheim. I saw the reconstructed version they did for Turner Classic Movies.
Yeah,
which I thought was pretty interesting.
It was interesting. I mean, because they're using all these different San Francisco movies, and I found it interesting that they didn't use anything from Fincher's Zodiac in this. Like,
no,
it was interesting. I thought for sure they would, but I don't know. It was just interesting. I mean, I don't know why they didn't, but I guess maybe things just didn't work from that. But that movie is my favorite Fincher movie, period. So it's probably one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. Yeah.
Well, there's David Fincher's The Game that was used in this movie.
Yeah, so they use that too. I mean, Fincher's probably my favorite like living director. So I really like his style. So yeah, and even though I've heard it's hell on his sets because he does a million takes of things and tries to get it exactly right. So. So.
Yeah, I would love to put myself in saying that, I mean, all artists can be either good artists or they can be tortured artists. Yeah. I mean, name any other director who had done something that may have not worked on the set, like either today or otherwise. But other than that, Fincher, I think, is another pretty good example. I mean, I don't know if he's on the same level as Kubrick was on his movie sets. No. No,
Kubrick would take years to shoot one scene. I mean, it's just like, basically, not really, but sometimes, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What did you, anything else you see here, Sesame, that you want to talk about?
Just like small things, like I don't know much about these kind of films as you guys do, but like, there was a part where they were like watching an NSYNC music video on one of the TVs for a second. I don't know what that was about, but that was kind of very jarring in a sense because they're just kind of like looking at it like, okay, and like the very end of the movie too, where the woman's like, "You were a great listener," and then the movie ends. Like, wait, what?
Yeah, just ends after that.
That's Guy Maddin's sense of humor. He always has a sort of interesting, like, surreal sense of humor in any body of his work. I mean, his films are like pastiches, is how I would describe them. If you were to watch any of his other movies that are meant to be like his version of silent movie cinema or expressionistic German expressionistic movies, he also does like his own take on them, which is what I think is like his sense of humor. The other one I liked was the endless montage of Chuck Norris from An Eye for an Eye. They used like different clips from that same movie, I think just to make it sort of like, try to present him as if he was sort of a leading dramatic actor, even though he was in this low budget, even though he was in this action 80s movie, which I thought made it interesting.
There's something when you see young Chuck Norris too, where you realize that guy needs a mustache. Like some people's faces, like he just doesn't look right without a mustache. It's just something. It's kind of like Tom Selleck. Sometimes when you see him without a mustache, you're just like, you need a mustache, man. It's just
And that one I thought was pretty interesting, and I was trying to find oh my gosh, there were I did like seeing that one, and there were other humorous moments, I guess, when you see the clip from Basic Instinct just after Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone were doing it in bed, and then he gets up and you see him, and all you see is him nude and his butt, and then it dissolves into something like an Edison movie, and then it transitions to like a young Michael Douglas and Carl Malden on an episode of Streets of San Francisco saying, and Michael says, "You should be in show business."
Oh yeah,
which I thought was
real.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how they take the movie Vertigo and present it through this like kind of like blender sort of like way of things. But it's just interesting too, because like the movie Vertigo, I mean, it's a great movie. And speaking of difficult directors, Hitchcock was definitely a difficult sexist director, and that movie is, in my opinion, the epitome of him. Like, it's basically like his I think his soul kind of just like laid out on a film, because of the way that it's basically this look at like the male gaze on females, and how you basically are trying to create your perfect woman and like recreate. And the whole idea of Vertigo is like the recreation of something, and then you take The Green Fog, which is a recreation of a movie about recreation, and it's just really, really interesting that they would do this. Yeah.
It is interesting, because now that I'm starting to make sense of things a little bit, because there's a scene where this actress, I know I've seen her in something, like I just don't know her name, where she's having dinner with her dad, and she's like saying stuff like, I want to become somebody. And he's like, oh, you always were somebody. And then later on, they're at another dinner, I think either with the same actress or maybe a different one. This guy is like, oh, maybe just change your hair a little bit and do this with your face. And like basically saying she's not beautiful enough the way she is, that they have to like do her hair and stuff. So now when Mike says something about like, oh, trying to create the perfect woman, I'm like, oh, maybe that's what that scene was about,
Yeah, you definitely. I would love to maybe in a future episode, Sesame, like get your take on Vertigo if you end up watching it, because I think you would. I'd like to see what your feel about that movie is. It's a beautiful movie, but it's got some problems, like like with. I mean, with modern society, I guess it would have some problems if people look at it. But you can also look at it as a warning about how men view women a lot as like a visual sexual object, as opposed to having a soul and being a real human sometimes, which with things like we're talking about X-rated movies earlier, like how people put women as sex objects as opposed to actual living, breathing humans who have ideas and things to offer the world that are other than their looks. Yeah. So I mean, in this movie, definitely, it's interesting too. I mean, this is definitely a love letter to San Francisco, but it's also just interesting how it looks at things, and the whole. I just thought it was an interesting concept. It's just interesting that this wasn't what they originally wanted to do when they started doing this project, but then they kind of found their way in through Vertigo, because there wasn't really going to be a story. It was originally just going to be like clips of movies that take place in San Francisco, but they found a way to do this. So yeah.
Pretty much. It's nothing like Christian Marclay's The Clock or Final Cut, Ladies and Gentlemen, where in that film, I think it's from Hungary, where they just take clips and it's in the form of a romantic movie. Or in Christian Marclay's The Clock, which is 24 hours long. You won't find it on the internet. You would have to go to like an art museum exhibit. It's just you're watching clips of different movies and TV shows of The Clock in real time. But I mean, I like collage art. I think collage film is also pretty interesting. And I noticed before I did this, that Guy Madden had to get a fair use lawyer before this movie was supposed to premiere, because even though these clips were taken directly from films that are copyrighted, he couldn't publish this on DVD or on any streaming platform. I don't know if Criterion did it years ago, but it's an interesting concept. And as I watched something and as I read, he had it previously on Vimeo. Vimeo doesn't have it anymore, so I guess he moved it directly to Internet Archive. So yeah, that's pretty much where he wanted to put it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see a lot of the reasons that there's like definitely going to be, legal ramifications for trying to put this on a legit streaming service or something like that, in any way that anybody makes any money off of it, because this definitely couldn't end up on like Netflix or Amazon Prime or something, because then there'd be some kind of income coming to somebody from it, and you definitely can't be making money off of even Macmillan and Wife. It's just something you can't repurpose that legally.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Speaking of clips, I did remember one of the other clips that was filmed in set in the city of San Francisco, and this is the colorized version. Was it came from Beneath the Sea from 1955? I think starring Kenneth Tobey, Faith Domergue, and I think the stop motion effects by Ray Harryhausen. There were like clips of it where one scene takes place when I guess the main protagonists were underwater and they were one of the scuba divers. This was like his reconstruction of James Stewart rescuing Kim Novak when she was I don't know if she was trying to put herself in the water, and he rescued her, and I think that was like trying to do his version of it. But it's pretty interesting. Or there was another scene where you see like a clip of McMillan and wife, and you see a brief clip of the famous octopus when it comes into the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, and the fire and the people with these huge flamethrowers were trying to attack this large octopus-like monster. If for those who have never seen it, it's something that I thought was enjoyable as somebody who loves old school visual effects of stop motion animation. Before CG came around, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too. Like the movie Obsession by Brian De Palma was basically kind of like almost a loose remake of Vertigo too, and I've seen that before too, so it's just interesting to see how different people throughout history still go back to that movie. I mean, it's a very influential movie too. Like, it's just in a lot of ways, like especially when it comes to like the process of obsession, not the movie Obsession, but the idea of obsession, because it's people will, I mean, and I think it's interesting too, because we look at the like psychological ramifications of people. Like, people will become obsessed with someone, like you go to a coffee shop or something and you see the barista behind the counter and you talk to her every day or something, and some men will become obsessed with that type of thing. I mean, this has never happened to me, but I mean, it has actually, but that's another story, like where you see that person, but there's this idea, like there's that perfect stranger, not Belky and Cousin Larry sort of perfect strangers, but the perfect stranger idea of somebody that you don't really know, but they're perfect until you get to know them, sort of idea. There was a song called Perfect Stranger by Patty Rothberg back in the 90s that actually has that concept where she's obsessed with this guy, but she doesn't want to meet him because he's still a perfect stranger, basically meaning that he's perfect in her mind as like the perfect man. But if she meets him, then she'll start to see his flaws and realize that he's a human and that he has ideas and a sanctity of his own beliefs and stuff. That it's like this whole idea that, you can fall in love with the idea of someone before you actually fall in love with the actual person. So, yeah, but a lot of times the idea of someone, because I've had that happen to me where I've like fallen in, like I meet somebody and I think, oh wow, she's great, she's awesome and everything, and then you get to know her and you realize, wait, she's racist or she's this, you're just like, wait, and then you're like, wait, no, she's not cool, different things, or whatever it is, or she has really weird political beliefs or is into weird conspiracy theories, or she's just, or just something else, like, she has really weird taste in music and I really can't be with that person because of that, because we all have our own little quirks where there's certain things we don't want to have a relationship with somebody, even if it's just a friendship, because, obviously, of course, if it's something as extreme as racism, you definitely don't want to be friends with somebody, but
the other thing I liked about this film is that you'll notice that in the structure, the film starts with a prologue and then it goes into different chapters, like chapter 1, Weekend at Ernie's instead of Weekend at Bernie's, and the other chapter, Catatonia, which I thought was a pretty interesting like way of structuring this film. It's like the best way I would say it is, or describe this movie, is that this is an abridged, reconstructed version of Vertigo, like we mentioned before. And the other thing I liked about this film is whenever you see like the mindset of the character, what the character's going through, you'll notice like they're using like clips of the destruction of San Francisco or references to the 1906 earthquake in this film. And the only other two movies that I found that were somewhat recent, 2014's Godzilla and 2015 San Andreas and Terminator Genesis. These were like the only three I guess recent movies that were used in this collage film. You'll notice like you won't see like the stars from those movies. You'll see like maybe clips of it if you rewatch the three movies that I have mentioned. And the other thing I liked about this film is that it makes me want to go back and re-watch some of those clips. I mean, one of the clips I watched as I saw this film was the Doris Day film Julie, which I covered on my show, and Nora Prentice, and the Clark Gable musical San Francisco. I've listed a few of those movies that were in the Green Fog on my podcast, which I thought I wanted to bring that up, which is why I thought it would be interesting to do it. And there were like other films that you had no idea that was directed by these directors. And speaking of movies that were influenced by Vertigo, there were also like films that I know they didn't use them, but I thought I would mention them anyway. Chris Marker's La Jetée from 1962, which was later remade as 12 Monkeys with Bruce Willis. There was Sans Soleil, which is also by the same director, Chris Marker. And then there was one on top of the other by Lucio Fulci. I watched that film. This is before Fulci made like the gore and zombie movies of the 70s and 80s, which I thought was pretty interesting. So his film is in it. And then there were like other international movies that were filmed in San Francisco. Like there was this film called Take Me Away by Nobuhiko Okamoto, the director of the 1977 cult classic House. For those who have not seen it, it's a pretty amazing film. I saw this one. And then the Basic Instinct, of course, everybody is familiar with it, which is Verhoeven's version of Vertigo, I guess. And Final Analysis from 1992, the same year, which was like all throwbacks to Hitchcock. The Net, starring Sandra Bullock, and of course, because he's in the movie, Mel Brooks's High Anxiety, which is his own like spoofs of Alfred Hitchcock.
That movie's great. If you haven't seen it, it's hilarious. I love Mel Brooks anyway, so it's great. But La Jetée is interesting too. That that became 12 Monkeys. It's like it. That's an interesting film because that's just like kinesthesis, where it's just photographs, and it's not really, it's like a collage of photographs, and not really, there's only like one moving image in that whole movie, but it's just where you kind of zoom in and out and almost do the Ken Burns effect on photos, but just to show what you're trying to do and stuff. And it's interesting concept. I made a couple of films like that when I was in my film classes in college, so it was interesting style.
Yeah, pretty much. I was like a fan of Chris Marker, and I liked the French New Wave filmmakers as well. And as you mentioned Maya Deren. The first film that every college student would see when they study film was Meshes of the Afternoon, a very dream-like, she never called herself surrealist. She always referred to her films as like film noirs or movies of the state of mind, which I think it's pretty much a true statement, and it does have that same effect. Another filmmaker who unfortunately sadly passed away very recently, David Lynch, who directed his film. You can see the rest in peace, David Lynch. I mean, you can see the like Hitchcock and Vertigo inspiration in his films and his TV shows and stuff. There's definitely a thread there that led to Lynch. I mean, I liked his film Mulholland Drive. The only other films I have not seen, I haven't seen Twin Peaks, I haven't seen Blue Velvet, I haven't seen his version of Dune, or The Straight Story, his only G-rated movie with Richard Farnsworth. Or his other really interesting films, like like all the other films that he made. I've seen a clip from his first some of his short films that he made back in the late 60s and early 70s. Or his most famous masterpiece, Eraserhead from 77. I only saw like a clip of that movie. But going back to, sort of like filmmakers influenced by Vertigo and doing their own versions of it, I always thought that Mulholland Drive was like his version of Vertigo, but done in a completely like dark and surrealistic and almost visionary way that I thought it does feel like a Vertigo film, but at the same time, it's his own version of it.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at the whole idea of Vertigo's like obsession with a woman and trying to create the perfect woman, I mean, it all comes back to like Pygmalion or My Fair Lady sort of thing too, when it comes to like trying to create that perfect female, and like the whole idea of like the whole like history of Pygmalion and everything. I mean, I made a short film when I was in college called A Porcelain Pygmalion in Reverse was the name of the movie. And it was about a little porcelain doll that instead of the guy becoming obsessed with the sculpture that he was making, which was Pygmalion, I had it where the porcelain doll was obsessed with the guy. The doll came to life and was obsessed with the guy, and then he ended up having to get rid of her by burying her in the backyard. So yeah.
It's amazing. I would remember going into, this is not related to film class, but like in Greek mythology class about the whole Pygmalion myth. Like, if there was like a reversal, instead of it being like from the female gaze or like the male gaze onto the woman, it would be like, what if there was like a female version of it, but it's the male gaze, but then someone would say, oh, it's the same thing, like what you're doing, but I don't know how it could be different. I don't know how you do a gender reversal and try to say, oh, I'm not trying to be sexist by saying that we're objectifying women, I'm just saying that we're trying to be equals here. And then you're like, I don't know if you're being equal. You're just doing the same thing like what this director did, I guess.
It's true. I mean, it's the whole thing. I mean, did you notice any themes in here with Sesame or anything that you found interesting in this movie that you'd like to add?
No, because I've never seen the Vertigo before, so
yeah.
So I was just kind of going blind, which is kind of, I guess,
I'm
kind of interesting.
I'm actually just curious what you took away from it without ever seeing Vertigo. I'm just kind of curious about that aspect of it.
Just I don't know, it just kind of left me with like a weird state of emotion, but almost like euphoric towards the end, which I don't really, it's hard to describe, really is. Like, I mean, just like the whole thing where people are gonna talk, and then like as soon as they open their mouths, it just cuts to the end of their sentence. And so that was really jarring for a while. But then slowly over time, the people actually start talking, and it's like they're trying to solve some mystery or whatever. Like what's, like they keep going, oh, play back on the video or whatever, and then it'll just play some random thing or whatever. I don't really know. Like, the symbolism and stuff, that's not really my wheelhouse or whatever. But and like I said before, I don't really think it's accurate, but what I noticed is the green fog would usually appear whenever there was like a really strong emotion. It's probably just my imagination, but that's what I know.
I think you're right there, actually. I mean, I think it does kind of tie, the green fog ties into like some kind of emotion or feelings, strong feelings, and then also the earthquake aspect too. Like that'll appear too, like the fog and the earthquake, and it's kind of like natural things that are tied into emotion when it comes to like, because our emotions are natural. So it is interesting.
Yeah. I would agree with him there, because when I was watching it the first time, I did not understand the usage of the green fog or the usage of the earthquake, but I would say it definitely does. It does have an emotional impact on it as well. There's a lot of like usage of tinting the colors or tinting things that may seem like it was shot for night or something like that, which I thought it's pretty much an interesting concept. The other thing I liked was whenever you do see like the montage of arguments from various clips, obviously from like Hotel or Murder, She Wrote, or Jagged Edge with Glenn Close and Jeff Bridges, or Jade, or any of those other movies, when they start arguing and the earthquake starts to erupt, it does have an emotional impact. And I just love that it ends with Nicolas Cage from The Rock saying, this is one of the deadliest substances on Earth, so why don't you cut me some freaking slack? which I thought was a great way to end like a sort of a fighting sequence or fighting montage that occurred, like intercutting between the fights between like these various actors, and then the earthquake, and then back to like the escalator scene, which I thought was a pretty interesting editing choice.
Yeah, to use escalator. was interesting. I mean, I really like this. Before we wrap things up, is there any other major things you want to say about this? Either one of you guys?
No.
Because I think. Yeah. Go ahead, Jordan.
Okay. So I think the last thing I'll end up with is if you try to watch all the movies or TV shows that were used in this film, I would say don't watch all of them at once because it'll be a waste of your time. Just try to separate. Because I read that when Guy Madden and his co-directors were watching it, they like over 200 movies and TV shows. They had to go to like 2 or 5 times X to fast forward as many clips as they could because they couldn't watch all the movies and TV shows because they knew it was a waste of time. I would say just divest your time wisely in watching whatever you can find, if it's on YouTube or maybe a bootleg DVD or maybe on whatever streaming service you can find, or go physical DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, and just try to piece it together instead of watching it all at once. Because that would be a very daunting task, though. I mean, to try to watch all these, because I mean, if you just even if everything was only an hour, because I know some of these things are really long too. Like even if they were only an hour, and there's like roughly like what was it, like over 100 things that were used in this? 95 movies. So it was. So 95 movies and 6 television shows.
So yeah, I mean, even at an hour a piece, that's like, you know, you're wasting over 100 hours of your life. So
yes.
So it's like, not wasting. But what I'm saying is that would take a lot of time management, and that would take years to probably go through. So yeah, I mean, I guess you could do it. You know, I mean, I've sat down and watched, hour dramas, like binged watched the whole show, and then they have like, like 300 episodes, and you're just like, wait, what? Mm-hmm. I just, watched all that in like a couple months.
Yeah.
But yeah.
When you do that, well, you're invested though, so your mind is kind of ready for it.
Yeah, but
it reminds me though.
Yeah, it's not so bifurcated too. It's just like, you're all like one thing, so it's like, yeah. So it's just
yeah. Speaking of Nicolas Cage, though, it reminds me of an episode of Community where it's like either in a film class, it's like Nicolas Cage, good or bad, and the professor's like, I must warn you, pace yourself. Don't watch more than 2 Nicolas Cage movies in a day. And Abed Nadir, of course, he's like the prodigy, and he's like I'm warning you, like don't get too ahead of. So like he ends up like getting into this huge conspiracy theory where he's like, there's like a scene in Snake Eyes where it looks like an alien is coming or whatever. And like he like loses his mind. He watched so many Nicolas Cage films in like 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do not recommend watching the work of Nicolas Cage in like 3 days. That would probably drive you insane.
150 movies at this point, yeah.
Yeah, that also reminds me of there was another TV show, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where the captain's husband and Jake, the main character, were stuck in quarantine together, and Jake brought his whole film collection, and all of his movies that he brought were Nicolas Cage films, and and he's just like, and the guy's going crazy. It's just like, there are other actors, right? You're just like, just going crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, yeah. But anyways, I'd like to thank you, Jordan, for coming on the show. Can you remind our guests again where they can find your show and what the name of it is?
Oh, sure. So my show is called Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. My episodes drop on Fridays at 4:00. And you can find my show on YouTube and on Spotify. And you can also reach me on Facebook, Instagram. I'm hopefully not using Threads, and I'm hopefully going to use Blue Sky. So yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. We're also on Blue Sky. For Cullen Park Productions, the producers of the show. You can find us everywhere. Just go to all2ReelToo.com, and there's links to stuff there. Our Twitter link on there actually takes you to our Blue Sky, because I got rid of Twitter because F Elon. And so yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks again for joining us. Just want to remind people that, be sure to subscribe to our show, subscribe to Jordan's show. Give us reviews if you can, because that's the best way to get the word out there. Share it with your friends. Share this episode anywhere you can. Just remember that I love you. Sesame loves you. Jordan probably loves you too. And and remember that the world is a crazy place. Don't let it get to you. Black lives matter. Trans lives are human lives. Free Palestine. And until next time, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to All2ReelToo podcast, a Cullen Park production. Produced and edited by Michael E. Cullen II. Music by Matthew Hawes. Subscribe and share the show. Visit us at cullenpark.com.